The hotel room was in chaos. Empty whiskey bottles littered the floor, a half-eaten takeout container sat on the nightstand, and the heavy curtains were drawn tight, blocking out the city lights beyond the window. The air smelled of sweat, alcohol, and desperation. Richard sat hunched over on the edge of the bed, his usually confident posture completely broken. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the top, revealing a glimpse of his now too thin chest. His salt and pepper hair, always neatly styled, was disheveled as if he had been running his hands through it for hours. His trembling fingers clutched his phone like a lifeline. The number he was trying to reach had been disconnected. His mind was racing. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't real. He scrolled back through his messages, rereading them over and over as if searching for a clue, some sign that this was all a mistake. Baby, I just need a little more help, just a little more. I promise this is the last time. You trust me, don't you? We're in this together. I love you, Richard. Forever. Lies. All of it lies. His jaw clenched as he tried dialing the number again. A robotic voice answered. The number you are trying to reach is no longer in service. His breath hitched. He wiped the sweat off his forehead with the back of his hand and tried calling her through WhatsApp. No profile picture. No status update. Blocked. His hands shook violently. He fumbled with his banking app, logging in as quickly as possible. Maybe, just maybe, he had been overreacting. Maybe the money was still there and she was just... His heart dropped. Balance. $0. The room spun. His entire savings gone. Every last cent. A bitter laugh escaped his throat. His own reflection stared back at him from the mirror across the room, a hollowed-out man who had lost everything. The ringing of his phone made him jolt. His heart leaped. Maybe it was her. Maybe she was calling back. Maybe this wasn't real. He grabbed the phone, his sweaty fingers barely holding onto it. But the number was unknown. Hello. His voice was hoarse, desperate. The response was chilling. A slow, amused chuckle. A woman's voice, smooth as silk yet razor-sharp. Oh darling. You sound stressed. His stomach twisted. Camille. She sighed dramatically. I told you, didn't I? If you didn't send the last payment by last night, things would get messy. He struggled to find his words. I don't understand. You said. I said a lot of things, sweetheart. Her tone was mocking now, dripping with condescension. But let's be honest, did you really think a woman like me would fall for a man like you? His blood turned to ice. The realization hit him like a freight train. He had been played. Every moment, every whisper, every touch. It had all been an act. His mouth went dry. You were using me? Soft laugh. Oh, Richard. You're adorable when you're naive. He gritted his teeth, his hands balling into fists. Where is my money? Silence. Then with a smirk in her voice she said, gone. The call disconnected. Richard let out a strangled scream and hurled his phone against the wall. It shattered on impact, pieces scattering across the floor like the remnants of his pride. He stumbled to his feet, breathing heavily, his mind spiraling. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't supposed to happen. He had always been the one in control. The one who manipulated, who took, who walked away unscathed. Not this time. This time he was the fool. And the worst part? Someone had set him up. 6 months earlier. The afternoon sun filtered through the living room curtains, casting golden streaks across the plush beige carpet. The scent of lavender from my mother's essential oil diffuser filled the air, creating an atmosphere of warmth and calm. But there was nothing warm or calm about the storm that was about to hit. I was sitting on the couch, my mother's laptop balanced on my knees, scrolling through my school assignment. The printer had been acting up, so I decided to try printing from her device instead. As soon as I opened the browser, a notification popped up in the corner of the screen. A message. I miss you, baby. Can't wait to see you tonight. Hope your wife doesn't suspect a thing. Winky face. I froze. My eyes locked onto the message, my fingers hesitating above the keyboard. My first thought was that it had to be a mistake. Maybe it was spam. Maybe it was a joke. But deep down I knew better. A sinking feeling settled in my gut as I clicked on the message. The conversation thread opened, revealing an exchange of hundreds of texts, pictures, and voice messages between my stepfather, Richard, and a woman named Jessica. The name alone made me sick. I clicked through the messages, reading them with growing horror. Last night was amazing. You're so much better than your wife in every way. When are you going to leave her? You keep saying you will. You're the only one I want, Richard. Don't make me wait too long. I swallowed hard. My pulse pounded in my ears. This wasn't just some flirtation. This wasn't a harmless mistake. Richard had been cheating on my mother for months. Maybe even years. My breathing became shallow as I scrolled through photos. Richard and Jessica at a hotel, drinking champagne, laughing, wrapped in each other's arms. Another picture of them on a tropical beach, his hand resting possessively on her hip. A receipt for a luxury handbag he had bought her. Expensive dinners. Weekend getaways. Lies upon lies upon lies. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. How could he do this? My mother had loved him with everything she had. She had trusted him. She had let him into our lives, believing he was the man who would stay, who would take care of us. And this was how he repaid her? I heard the front door open and my heart jumped. Footsteps. My mother was home. I snapped the laptop shut, my body rigid as she walked into the living room, grocery bags in her hands. She gave me a tired smile. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, setting the bags down on the kitchen counter. "Everything okay?" I stared at her, my throat dry. She looked exhausted. The shadows under her eyes were darker than usual, her hair slightly unkempt from a long day at work. She had spent years putting everyone else before herself, especially Richard. She deserved the truth. "Mom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She turned to me, sensing something was wrong. "Mia? What is it?" I hesitated, the weight of what I was about to say pressing heavily on my chest. Then, without a word, I opened the laptop again and turned the screen toward her. The color drained from her face. She stepped forward slowly, her eyes scanning the messages, the pictures, the evidence of her husband's betrayal. Her hands shook as she scrolled through them, reading each word as if trying to convince herself that she was imagining it. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then finally, in a voice so soft I barely heard it, she whispered, "I knew." My eyes widened. "You've what?" She swallowed hard. "I didn't know for sure, but I suspected. The late nights, the business trips that didn't make sense. The way he stopped looking at me the way he used to." She let out a shuddering breath, rubbing her temples. I just didn't want to believe it. A lump formed in my throat. "Mom." She shut the laptop and straightened her back, blinking rapidly as if trying to fight the tears threatening to spill. Then she did something that shocked me. She smiled. It was small, sad, but full of relief. "Thank you for telling me, Mia," she said. I didn't know what to say. I had expected her to break down, to cry, to scream in anger. But instead she just seemed tired. Later that night she confronted Richard. I stood in the hallway, listening as she told him everything she had seen. He didn't even try to deny it. Instead he sighed heavily and muttered, "Well, I guess there's no point lying now." That was it. No apology. No remorse. Just a cold, heartless confession. I heard my mother inhale sharply, as if trying to keep herself from falling apart. Then she said the words that would change everything. "I want you out of this house by morning." And just like that, Richard was gone. I thought that would be the end of it. That my mother and I could finally move on, rebuild, heal. But life isn't that simple. Because Richard? He didn't disappear quietly. Within weeks he was posting pictures all over social media. Pictures of him and her. Jessica. The woman he had chosen over my mother. They were traveling the world, staying in 5-star resorts, dining at the most expensive restaurants. Richard had moved on like our family had never meant anything to him. And my mother? She was alone, sitting in a quiet house filled with memories of a man who never truly loved her. One night I found her in the kitchen staring at an old wedding photo. Tears slid down her face silently. She didn't notice me watching. And that was the moment I knew. Richard wasn't going to get away with this. He had shattered my mother's heart, walked away without consequences, and now he was flaunting his new life like we had never existed. But I wasn't going to let that happen. If Richard thought he could betray my mother and live happily ever after, he was wrong. Very, very wrong. Richard thought he had won. While my mother sat in our quiet house, picking up the shattered pieces of her heart, he was out there, living the life of a man untouched by guilt. He had walked away from the mess he created, but he had no idea that a storm was brewing right behind him. And I was the one stirring it. I spent nights lying awake, my mind running through every possible way I could make him suffer. Exposing him to his new girlfriend? Pointless. He was already a liar. Jessica wouldn't care. Begging him to feel remorse? Laughable. Richard was incapable of shame. But if I wanted to destroy him, I had to hit him where it hurt the most. His pride. His power. His money. Richard had always been arrogant about his finances, constantly flashing his wealth like it made him invincible. He funded Jessica's lifestyle as if he had an endless supply of cash, throwing money at luxury vacations, designer bags, and jewelry like it was nothing. That was his weakness. And that was exactly where I was going to strike. I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone who knew how to play the game. Someone who could make Richard believe in a dream so beautiful he would never see the nightmare coming. I needed a scammer. The kind who knew how to twist words into promises, who could spin illusions so flawless that even the most skeptical men fell for them. I spent weeks searching. I lurked in online forums, read articles about famous financial scams, watched interviews with victims who had been left penniless. I needed to understand the game before I could find a player. Then I found her. Her name was Camille. Well, at least that's what she called herself. I first came across her on a private social media group, one that wasn't exactly legal. It was filled with people who specialized in deception, people who knew how to make money disappear. She was the best of them. Her reputation was legendary. Rich men had fallen at her feet, emptying their bank accounts before they even realized they'd been played. She wasn't just a scammer. She was a professional heartbreak artist. And I needed her. I didn't reach out to her directly. That would have been foolish. Instead, I found someone who knew her. It took a few carefully worded messages, some fabricated stories, and a promise of something lucrative before I finally got a reply. "Who are you?" That was her first message to me. "Someone with a job for you," I typed back. She didn't respond immediately. I imagined she was sitting back, calculating whether I was worth her time. Finally, her next message came. "I don't take jobs from amateurs." I smiled. He was smart. Good. That's exactly what I needed. "I'm not an amateur," I replied. "I have a target who's stupid, rich, and arrogant. He's desperate for attention, easy to manipulate, and has no idea what's coming. If you do this right, you'll make a lot of money. And I mean a lot." Another long pause. Then finally, "I'm listening." I spent the next 2 weeks feeding Camille every detail she needed to become Richard's perfect fantasy. I told her about his obsession with younger women, his midlife crisis, his desperation to prove he was still desirable. I gave her everything. His likes, dislikes, insecurities, the way he always boasted about his money but never handled it wisely. Camille listened to it all. She asked the right questions, took notes, and studied Richard like he was an exam she was going to ace. "Men like him," she said one night over the phone, "they want to feel powerful. They want to feel like they're in control. The trick is making them believe that, while you quietly take everything they own." I smirked. "Then let's take everything." And so we did. Camille slid into Richard's life like a whisper. Subtle at first, barely noticeable. A new Instagram follower, a casual like on his posts, a flirtatious comment on one of his pictures. She let him come to her. And of course he did. Within a week, Richard was hooked. He started sending her money, gifts, vacations, all to keep her attention. He thought he was playing the game. But in reality, he was the one being played. And before he knew it, he was broke. Richard had no idea he was standing on the edge of a financial cliff. Camille played him like a master violinist. Every note perfect, every move precise. She gave him just enough affection to keep him desperate, just enough distance to make him chase harder. And every time he wanted more, he had to pay for it. At first it was small things. A designer bag here, a few luxury spa treatments there. Just enough to make him feel needed, like he was taking care of his beautiful, helpless girl. Then came the big things. A loan for her struggling business. A down payment on a penthouse she wanted. A secret vacation just for us, that she never showed up to. The money was bleeding out of him fast. But Richard, he was too in love to see it. He kept sending more. And more. And more. Until one day he woke up to find himself completely broke. The first signs of Richard's downfall were subtle. The flashy Instagram posts stopped. The luxury trips disappeared. Jessica, the woman he had left my mother for, started posting less about him and more about herself. as if she was slowly distancing herself from the sinking ship that was Richard's life. Then came the creditors. Richard's business had never been as successful as he claimed. He had been floating on borrowed money, making risky investments, spending like he was untouchable. But now there was nothing left. I watched from a distance as his world fell apart. His house, foreclosed. His car, repossessed. His credit cards, maxed out. And Jessica? She was gone. She dumped him in the most humiliating way possible. Publicly. She posted a picture of herself with a new, wealthier man captioned, "Upgrading nail polish sparkles." Richard didn't comment. But I knew he saw it. He saw everything. And for the first time I think he realized. He had nothing left. Then came the hotel room. The last place he could afford to stay. I imagined him sitting there, staring at the empty bottles, at the ruins of his life, trying to figure out where it had all gone wrong. And then Camille called him. Not to apologize. Not to explain. Just to laugh. She dragged it out, taunting him, making him realize just how stupid he had been. And then, finally, when she had nothing left to take, she hung up, leaving him alone. Broke. Ruined. And for the first time in his life, completely, utterly powerless. I had been waiting for this moment. For months, I had watched as Camille played him, as she took everything he had ever bragged about owning. And now it was time for my final move. I sent him one text message. Just one. "Karma's a b***, isn't it?" He never responded. But I knew. I had won. And Richard? He had finally lost. Richard never responded to my text. But I didn't need him to. I already knew that he had lost. I kept an eye on him from a distance, watching as he tried and failed to rebuild his life. The once proud, arrogant man who had walked out on my mother was now a ghost of himself. Broke. Alone. Irrelevant. The luxury lifestyle? Gone. The expensive suits? Pawned. The women who once clung to him? Nowhere to be found. Jessica, the woman he had left my mother for, had moved on so quickly it was embarrassing. She was now dating a wealthier man, someone who could afford to keep up with her demands. And Richard? Richard was yesterday's trash. One evening I got curious. I found myself standing outside the rundown motel where he had been staying. The neon sign flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows against the cracked pavement. I almost walked away. But then I saw him. Sitting outside his motel room, slumped over on a cheap plastic chair, staring blankly at the parking lot. He didn't see me. But I saw everything. The way his suit, once perfectly tailored, now hung loosely on his body. The way his hands trembled slightly as if he hadn't eaten in days. The emptiness in his eyes. Richard wasn't a man anymore. He was a broken thing. And for a brief moment I almost felt sorry for him. But then I remembered my mother. I remembered the nights she cried, thinking no one could hear her. I remembered the way she stared at her wedding photo, wondering what she had done wrong. I remembered everything. And any sympathy I had died right there. A few weeks later I got a call. It was from my mother. "Mia," she said, her voice uncertain. "Richard, he called me." I nearly dropped my phone. What did he say?" I asked, my heart pounding. "He said he wanted to talk," she murmured. "That he made mistakes. That he needs help." I scoffed. "Help? He didn't care when you needed help." There was a long pause. "I know," she finally said. "But I needed to hear it." And that's when I realized. She was finally free. For years, Richard had held power over her. His presence, his words, his betrayal. But now, he was the one begging. And she was the one walking away. I never saw Richard again. I heard through whispers that he had left town, disappearing into obscurity. No money. No friends. No future. Just a man who had destroyed everything good in his life. Me. I moved on. My mother moved on. For the first time in a long time we were happy. Richard had once believed he could betray my mother and walk away without consequences. He had been wrong. Because in the end, karma got him. And I made sure of it.